Thank all of you. Now we're going to start our questions, and I'll start with all of you on this one. In my opening statement, I think I said that the Commerce Department recently released its analysis of the impacts of outdoor recreation as a whole to the U.S. economy, and every state's impacted by it. But several years ago, the Forest Service specifically analyzed the impacts that its project, work, and visitation at each national forest has on local economies. The problem? Haven't done it since 2016. That's the problem. We don't know where we are. So we're, 5 years down the road here and have no idea the impact, which we think is much more enhanced than what it was. Can any of you comment to that, and what's your intentions as far as those, and Mr. French and Mr. Lambrecht that have responsibilities for those areas?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. We're on a 5-year cycle to redo those. We do those for every single forest. They're due to be revised within the next 6 months this year. It's part of this year's program of work.
Mr. Lambrecht?
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Barrasso.
You being brand new, you can really kick him in the butt and get it done quicker, maybe.
So the BLM in 2020, due to recreation activities, provided an estimated impact of $7.7 billion in economic output and supported 54,000 jobs. So that's the latest data that we have available, and it's something that we're constantly tracking. Appreciate the question.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment on that? Hold on, Ms. Turner?
Yeah, we definitely appreciate that the agencies have budget restrictions and a lot of...
So we have some good news about the stimulus payments. First of all, here's what we have to know about the Social Security increase. One of the few positive byproducts of spiking inflation is that the SSA noticed and did something about it. As a result, a number of important changes are coming to a Social Security statement near you in 2022. As the headliner of major changes happening in 2022, the SSA announced that all beneficiaries will receive a 5.9% increase in their monthly benefit checks. This increase is designed to help retirees maintain their purchasing power amid rising prices throughout the economy. However, even though you'll receive more, your ability to purchase goods and services really hasn't changed much. The SSA collects its premiums for old age, survivor, and disability insurance program by taxing 6.2% of your wage base. In 2021, this amount was $142,000, and in 2022, it will rise to $147,000. The age at which you can claim for retirement benefits is increasing to 67 in 2022. This applies to anyone born in 1960 or later. While it's not a massive difference to the individual if we're only talking about months over time, it does have a measurable financial impact when applied across the burgeoning retired population. And I know that many of you guys would like to see a monthly boost to the Social Security benefits. Well, the good news is that the SSA is working on it. They're also making it possible for early claimers to earn more money in retirement without impacting monthly benefit checks. Now, the American Rescue Plan allocated $1,400 payments for eligible individuals and their dependent children. While most people have already received their full payment, those who had eligible children in 2021 can claim the recovery rebate credit on their next tax return. EIP payments, also known as stimulus checks, were sent down in 2021 and part of the recovery rebate credit. Those who don't receive the full amount they're owed by December 31st can claim the remainder of the money when they file their taxes in 2022. And since the 2021 EIP payments are based on a person's 2020 or 2019 return, any eligible dependents that came into the family in 2021 were not included in the payments. So thank you for your support, everybody. I truly appreciate it. If you have any more questions about the Ford stimulus check, leave them in the comments below. Until next time, have a great day.
Thank you for your opening statements. We will now proceed under the 5-minute rule for questions, and I'll begin by recognizing myself for 5 minutes. Many Americans are taught in civics class that Congress passes a law and that's it. But the reality is that major legislation enacted by Congress that addresses climate change, workers' rights, health care, must also be implemented and enforced by the executive branch to become a reality. To do that, federal agencies go through a process of administrative rulemaking or the creation of regulation that enforces the law. Unfortunately, this has turned into a shadowy process where special interests and big corporations send a bevy of lobbyists to make sure that the rules benefit them. There's limited transparency or accountability in the creation and enforcement of regulation. Little opportunity for the average citizen to combat industry-backed research, meetings, testimony that's too often vying against the public interest. and at the end of the day, allowing corporations and special interests to essentially capture our government with their massive and undue influence on federal agency. Mr. Michaels, as the former Assistant Secretary of Labor for OSHA, you've seen firsthand how companies thwart regulation through funding sham academic studies or powerful lobbying groups. What impact do these instruments of power have on the administrative process, and how does this impact workers? You need to turn your microphone on. Thank you.
Representative Jayapal, thank you for that question. It's a huge impact. The wealthy corporations and wealthy individuals know how to impact the system in so many ways. From the very beginning, where they have lawyers who are preparing documents, they hire scientists to produce studies. They know they have findings that will impact regulation. There's a revolving door, and so they hire very senior administrative officials who then can help them get through regulation. And the most sort of lurid example, which I think everybody's aware of, is that Purdue Pharmaceuticals hired the FDA regulator, essentially, who looked at the opioids that they were producing to then work with them to make sure they could sell more opioids, really leading to this disastrous opioid epidemic. The public doesn't have an equal say in this, and that's exactly the problem. And the agencies are outgunned, as you heard from Professor Wagner, that knowing that they will end up in court, regulators often sort of pull back, or they negotiate with themselves even to protect the agency and to get something through. The result is that our regulations are weaker, they're not protective, and people are paying the price through illness, through death, and through a destroyed environment.
Thank you, Professor. Ms. Patterson, you're an expert in environmental and climate justice, and you've seen how the rulemaking process falls short in considering social equity in environmental regulation. Congress has required agencies to consider a host of industry-friendly economic factors when making rules, but it hasn't done the same for elements like equity and justice. How can Congress address that oversight?
Thank you. So one example is to make sure that we actually do have those avenues for public engagement in this conversation. So as I talked about the Office of Public Participation, and then also really building the capacity of agencies to be able to, and through that, in building the capacity of agencies to be able to engage directly with communities. So communities and public interest groups know the types of mechanisms that we need to have to ensure that we're delivering equity, and they need to be able to be at the table with equal status to be able to put those ideas forward.
Thank all of you. Now we're going to start our questions, and I'll start with all of you on this one. In my opening statement, I think I said that the Commerce Department recently released its analysis of the impacts of outdoor recreation as a whole to the U.S. economy, and every state's impacted by it. But several years ago, the Forest Service specifically analyzed the impacts that its project, work, and visitation at each national forest has on local economies. The problem? Haven't done it since 2016. That's the problem. We don't know where we are. So we're, 5 years down the road here and have no idea the impact, which we think is much more enhanced than what it was. Can any of you comment to that, and what's your intentions as far as those, and Mr. French and Mr. Lambrecht that have responsibilities for those areas?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. We're on a 5-year cycle to redo those. We do those for every single forest. They're due to be revised within the next 6 months this year. It's part of this year's program of work.
Mr. Lambrecht?
Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Barrasso,
You being brand new.